Many of the game modes in Guild Wars 2 are fun to an extent, but experiencing all of them together is a much more fully realized experience. And while the potential for build crafting is massive, sometimes you want to just relax and have fun without having to fiddle around with build templates. This is why I have created the ultimate build for Revenant in all game modes. So let me explain how it works. You will have one set of armor that you can use in both PvE and World vs. World, so you don't need to go out and get multiple sets of gear. You will have basically the same traits in all game modes, but you can change your Revenant legends very easily to allow you to make use of your traits and equipment while also optimizing for the type of play that you want to go for. This allows you to focus on the game rather than spending all your time preparing for it. Revenant always felt like the best class for creating builds that span different game modes because of how the stance mechanic works. Since you are forced to get an entire set of utilities, you are limited in your choices, but that also means that your utilities will be balanced for general play. This means that you don't have to give up your stun breaks in PvE for more damage, or that in PvP you have skills that can be useful in many situations. So you'll enjoy many options despite playing one build. Also, what I mean by a build that spans different game modes is a build that you won't have to tinker with templates to get it working every time you swap game modes, or a build that can provide you great results no matter where you play it. There may be a more meta PvP build to play, or a higher DPS raid build to play, or a more supportive team comp build that you can play, but those are all going to be situational, which means that they would be useless in other situations. However, this build still gets really close to being optimal at all game modes. Also, despite being mainly a Herald build, it has the option to play an arguably better version of the Alacrity Renegade build that most high-end PvE groups want in their composition. What I'm trying to say is that you can be a strong solo player when you just want to chill, and you can also fill a very key role in group content so that you can always find a group. I find this build to be the most fun build to play on Revenant that can also give you, in my opinion, the highest average results among all game modes, which is the real value in all of it. This is the Celestial Revenant. Actually, it's called the Fallen Angel because Celestial has something to do with stars and angels, and the corruption trait line and the legend stances you'll be using in this build are characters that have fallen from grace. I've actually made this build a while ago for World vs. World roaming, but since then it has been buffed with the Celestial stats now including boon duration and condition duration. For a build that is going to exist in all game modes, it has to have a comfortable playstyle that can survive by itself, provide presence for its team in larger situations, and also be able to kill things relatively easily. This build has all of that with the tankiness and sustain from Celestial stats, and the glint stance, great boon sharing from your facets, and great burst damage from both power and condition damage. Yes, this is a hybrid build, and usually that means it's a jack of all trades and a master of none, but hybrid builds which have access to lots of synergies such as might, vulnerability, multi-purpose skills, and hybrid trait damage modifiers can make them do lots of damage, and that is exactly what this build provides. So without any further ado, let's get into the build. Because the build is not fiddling with templates but still using them, there will be a few versions of the build for each game mode. You just want to set these up in your templates so that the game automatically switches them for you, and what this means is you will have the same equipment in PvE and World vs. World, and a free gear panel accessed here for PvP, and then you'll use the same traits for PvP and World vs. World, while PvE you will have two different trait setups, one for the Alacrity Renegade build and one for the Hybrid Boon Herald. Since you have by default 3 template slots, you will be able to do this without buying more template slots. I know this all sounds very complicated, and it absolutely can be confusing. If you want more information on how build templates work, you can check out my entire video on them. But the TLDR for this build is that whenever you enter a game mode, PvP, World v World, or PvE, it will swap to the template you were in last time you were in that game mode. So once you set everything up, it'll be easier. The equipment is full Celestial stats. Some classes or builds cannot get value out of every stat, but you absolutely will here. The Mace and Sword skills will scale very well with the Power, Precision, Ferocity condition damage, and Expertise is great for making your conditions last longer, even your debilitating chills and weakness. Toughness and Vitality are always useful, but Healing Power scales really well with Regeneration, which you can pulse with your Glint stance, and Boon Duration is going to really benefit you because there are tons of boons that you give out, especially the powerful Protection boon. Celestial gear may not be the easiest to obtain, but you can check out the gearing guide on guildgen.com. Basically, there are random boxes you get in World vs. World or PvP, which can give you exotic sets of armor until you get your Ascended. The trinkets can be berry farmed in Bitterfrost Frontier, and if you want Ascended inscriptions or insignias to convert Ascended gear to Celestial stats, you'll need to get charged quartz, which you can create 1 of per day in a home instance with the crate obelisk. Then I have Rune of Leadership. Get these from the provisioner at spawn in World vs. World using the tokens you get from participating. These give more Celestial stats, which is good, but also a lot more boon duration and the potential to cleanse conditions from you and your allies when using an elite skill. Since conditions are the weakness of Revenants, it also has good utility in solo situations. The weapons I use are Mace Axe and Sword Shield, but I would also get a staff because the Renegade version can't use shield. So on Herald use Sword Shield, and on Renegade use staff. I put a Hydromancy and Geomancy sigil on the Mace Axe and Cleansing Energy on the staff and Sword Shield. This is because the sword is a more defensive weapon set, with the 2 skill being the only real damage, and the Mace Axe set is much more damage oriented. I'll go over the skills rotations later, but essentially what you need to know is that swap sigils are affected by legend swapping. So if you swap into a weapon set and then the 9-second internal cooldown comes off, you can merely swap legend to get their effect. This allows you to choose which sigils you want to proc more often, because normally you swap to the weapon, it has a 9-second cooldown, you swap out to get the other sigils, and then there's another 9-second cooldown. This means you have to wait double the amount of time to get those sigils to proc. So if you're in PvE and you only want to do damage, you can camp the damage weapon set and keep triggering those sigils by just swapping legends. And if you're in PvP, in a situation where you need to kite and damage isn't relevant to your survival, you can camp the defensive weapon set and keep getting those sigils. Even further than this, you can get all 4 of your swap sigils to trigger off cooldown by swapping your legend stance first and then immediately swapping your weapons. This gives you 4 sigil triggers because first you swap legends, which triggers your current sigils, then you swap weapon, which triggers your next weapon set. Both of your sigil sets are on their cooldown for 9 seconds, just like your legend stance and weapon swap. Then once your legend swap comes off cooldown, you can get the same effect, which I like to call the Quadra swap. While this can feel really good to do every 9 seconds, it can be a bit predictable and limit your skill setups. We'll talk more about rotations and combos in a bit, but know that this is a large priority in the build. So let's go over what the PvE build is. First we'll look at the Hybrid Boon Herald, then the Hybrid Alacrity Renegade. The traits are Corruption, Invocation, and Herald. In Corruption you get a lot of passives that'll just increase your condition damage and duration. Because your chills give Torment, it allows your Hydromancy sigil to do decent power and condition damage, and you'll have a lot more swap triggers in this trait line. So on top of your sigil swaps, you'll get Burning, Poison, and Torment every time you swap legends from this trait line. Also, you will use the Demon Mallyx stance utilities in PvE because Mallyx provides more condition damage, while the mobility of Shiro isn't really necessary. In Invocation, you take the increased damage here, and there's a lot of Fury synergy in hybrid traits, and with the Fury application you gain Might with the Incense Response trait, so that's going to give you a nice hybrid boon which increases your condition damage and your power. You'll be hitting 25 Might and doing amazing damage constantly. Finally, take Song of the Mists, which will add another legend swap effect, which will depend on which legend you swap to. So without ever swapping weapons, just swapping legends, you proc Geomancy and Hydromancy, which do quite a bit of power damage, and then Chill, which gives Torment. Bleeding, you have Invoke Torment, which is giving more Torment, Diabolic Inferno, which is going to give Poison and Burning, and Song of the Mists for even more. This means you should be swapping legend as often as possible to keep proccing all of these instant damage sources. In Herald, I take the movement speed and the might generation to allies. Draconic Echo is an interesting Grandmaster that can be hard to understand. Basically, your glint stance has utilities which are facets. When they are channeled, they drain your energy and give boons to nearby allies. When you cast them, they use a powerful spell. Draconic Echo allows that passive boon sharing to persist for 6 more seconds after a facet is used. This means you can gain the benefits of the powerful spells and the team support. You can share out Might, Swiftness, Fury, Regeneration, and Protection even while you are in Mallyx stance because the Draconic Echo can follow through and keep sharing. Because you'll often be camping Mace Axe if the situation has no mechanics to it, your damage priorities are as follows. Always swap legend on cooldown to proc all the conditions and effects and to reset your energy. Mace 2 is the lowest cooldown and the highest damaging skill with a cast time, so using that is technically tied with legend swapping for your highest priority since swapping legends doesn't interrupt animations. Axe 5 is the next priority as it does the most damage out of any skill, but has a high cooldown. Then Mace 3 is the next priority. Axe 4 is low priority because the damage isn't that high and it's very clunky, so don't think about that other than for mobility. Because you will be swapping stances off cooldown, you will be swapping between certain utilities. If you're in Mallyx stance, always use your elite Embrace the Darkness immediately as your first animation, then resume prioritizing Mace 2 and so on. Don't use the other utilities unless you need the Call to Anguish for mobility or a good pull for groups of enemies, or the Boon Rip, or maybe a little bit of condition resistance to your allies. While in Glint stance, you'll want to pulse boons for your allies because your energy becomes much more renewable. If your party needs protection, prioritize that first. Fury is the next highest priority because it gives more damage boost than Might, and then give Might or Regen if necessary. Use the active effect of Faceted Elements without pulsing Swiftness because you'll get some from Draconic Echo anyways, and the active gives out pretty good burn damage. You can cast Bursts of Strength for a damage boost, but I generally only use this if I have no other skills to use. Faceted Light is also a really great heal because it gives regeneration and its active converts damage into healing and can be used to ignore one-shot mechanics. So here's what the rotation would look like. So I'm going to pop all my facet actives at the start just to get the boons rolling, and then immediately go into the demon stance, put up the elite skill, and then just go into the mace rotation there. So here's what it's going to look like. And then use the mace and the axe skills. Mace 2 is up again. My legend swap is coming off cooldown very soon. I'm going to use that and my 2 at the same time. Use Faceted Elements and my Mace 3. I'll give out some boons here with some Fury and Protection. My Axe 5 is coming up at the same time as my Mace 2. I forgot to put up Embrace the Darkness there, but I put it up eventually. And yeah, that's pretty much all you do. You just spam Mace 2, Mace 3, Legend Swap off cooldown, give boons as much as you can, and then, you know, do 2, 3, and 5. If you need to CC a break bar, Axe 5, Facet of Chaos, and your Call to Anguish will give out CC. Also, if you really feel in danger, don't hesitate to swap to your sword to survive. You can also give out protection and healing with Shield 4 if you aim it on top of your allies. The Alacrity build uses the same gear and has a staff instead of sword shield. While the other version of the build is great in every place in PvE, some compositions want someone to provide Alacrity, and Renegade is definitely the best at that. Yeah, there is the Mirage build, but that doesn't really provide the same benefits as an Alacrity Renegade because Renegade also gives out many other boons, does way more CC, and has massive AoE while giving out great DPS. While you don't have 100% boon duration, you can still pretty much do your job with the 70% boon duration that you get from the leadership runes and celestial gear, and that's because pretty much orders from above, if you use that and give out Alacrity, you'll pretty much be able to use it as soon as your Alacrity runs out. Obviously, situations won't always be ideal and you won't be in range to land your Alacrity every time it's ready, but in Pugs, you may want to give yourself more effect through damage than to rely on your DPS players to do everything, and in super tryhard groups, you'll kill the boss before the Alacrity runs its course anyway. If you really want to do more Alacrity uptime, you could eat concentration food such as the fried golden dumplings, which are super cheap. Anyways, the traits will be pretty much the same, but you will take charged mists instead of Song of the Mist because you need more energy resources. You'll want to swap legends below 10 energy to get the effect of this trait, which will give you 75 energy on swapping, which can be hard to do if you're legend swapping off cooldown. Just make sure you have enough energy to always give Alacrity. In Renegade, you take all the boon support that you can, especially Righteous Rebel, which is going to sustain your Alacrity uptime. The same priority follows with Renegade as with Herald. Swap legend when you can, and Mace 2 when you can. Whenever your group is stacked up, you want to use the F4 orders from above to give Alacrity. Make sure you stand together for all 6 seconds of the pulse to give maximum Alacrity. Then you can use the F2 heroic command to stack up your team's might. Just make sure you stacked up the Callous Fervor first, which means you just have to hit the boss for a little bit. From there, you can prioritize using Embrace the Darkness while in Mallyx, and in Kala, you can use Razor Claw's Rage, which will buff allies in range of the spirit that you put out to give bleeding, and you can also use Soul Cleave Summit, which will give out lifesteal to allies who are affected by the buff. You can also use Dark Razor's Daring, which will pulse out Daze, which is really good for CCing break bars. Ice Razor's Ire can give out tons of damage and vulnerability, but it's only better when your team isn't nearby to give buffs. Your heal skill is also very powerful, as it heals allies and gives them 50% condition damage reduction. Very powerful in CM100 or any situation where condition pressure is high. All of these spirits will give protection to allies, so you can forego a little bit of damaging skills after you've given Alacrity just to support a little bit more. The rotation is not so simple, but more situational because of all the utility you have on this build. Instead of showing a DPS rotation, I'll show an encounter instead. So this is a CM99 Arkk. My job in this encounter is to kill the anomalies here, which I can do easily with a legend swap on top of them because all of my damage is front loaded into that legend swap. And give Alacrity obviously whenever my team is together, and pretty much just do CC and mechanics and prioritize the life of my party rather than my DPS, right? I am going to try to do a little bit of DPS in this fight obviously because that helps to minimize the mechanics, but yeah, mostly the job of the Alacrity is to CC. So I did my Axe 5 there, I even did a little bit of a CC from the special action, and now from this point we are hitting the secondary mob here. We just got to worry about not looking into the light while still doing maximum DPS. Now an anomaly should spawn very soon. I have all my buffs on cooldown. I land a lot of my burst damage on the anomaly, then I go back to the boss. I want to avoid these balls, and once I do that, I go back to spamming my rotation, and the boss is going to go invulnerable at 60%. So I just want to get that to happen, and then the next phase will go on. So I'm just going to DPS here. So my Alacrity skill is coming off cooldown, but I'm not going to be on the boss with my team, so I delay using my Alacrity here to give it to my entire team. You don't want to use that selfishly. So I CC the boss with Call to Anguish, Axe 5, and we get the CC there. Now I'm going to swap on, you see there I instantly killed the anomaly with my swap, and probably a little bit of help from my team. And here my Alacrity skill comes up, but we're kind of doing a mechanic and I'm low on energy, so I actually delay my Alacrity there, which is not the best, but it's not terrible. And it's my job to kill the anomaly, so I go and do that. I'm a little bit low on burst because I was on cooldown there, but I go back to my team. I use the special action key through that mechanic, and at this point we are gonna have to split again. I just used my Alacrity, so that's kind of convenient timing, and I'm going to get this ball on me. I push it into the pillar, and by the time we get back to the boss, the Alacrity skill is going to come off cooldown. I'm going to use that immediately, as well as CC with Call to Anguish and Axe 5. And from here, I'm going to give a little bit more CC because it looked like we weren't killing it with the Dark Razor's Daring. And I'm going to play safe here and just kill the anomaly with a swap, and that's going to kill that. And yeah, we're just gonna finish the boss at this point. So that's kind of like how the priorities of the build work. You want to get Alacrity out, if possible, get the highest amount of Alacrity on as many people as possible, but you do want to be doing mechanics and CCing and protecting your team with all the boon support that you have as well. In PvP, you don't have access to the Celestial Amulet, so I go with Wizard, and then I fill in the gaps with a little bit of toughness from the Rune of the Fighter, and then you also get a lot of might from the Rune of the Fighter, which gives you a lot more damage because you're a hybrid build still. And then I take energy cleansing on Sword Shield still, and you don't really get the massive Geomancy and Hydromancy sigils in PvP, so I go with Doom Exposure, which is kind of nice because vulnerability is a very good hybrid condition as well, and it's also a cover condition. So the idea of the PvP build is you're going to be with the Glint and Mallyx stances. You take the same corruption traits as in PvE, but you take the Condi Cleanse in Invocation, and you also will have a little bit more defense from the Shield trait, which is also going to give you more condition cleanse. You pretty much want to think of your legend and your weapon swapping by the risk and reward of the situation. So if I go into Glint stance, that's a defensive stance because it gives you the heal, which is very safe. It gives you peel from the blinds, and you can knock people away and give yourself protection. So this is a defensive stance. Mallyx is not so much defensive because it just kind of has damage. Yeah, you do have resistance and resolution, but if you get trained down, you don't have any kind of active peeling for yourself, other than Call to Anguish, which is kind of costly. So if I'm in Mallyx, I generally like to be in Sword, or at least be close to Sword, like if my weapon swap is nearly off cooldown, because if I at any point get bursted or if I get focused, I can still access my defensive skills. So for example, if I go into a fight, I start out with my most aggressive weapon set, which is Mace Axe, there's pretty much no defense on it, and Mallyx, which is no defense pretty much. I'll at least be fine because I can swap my legend and go into Glint, or I can go into Sword. So you want to think of either mixing offensive with defensive, or waiting a little bit and not swapping both at the same time. So you don't always want to quadra swap is what I'm trying to say, so that if you do get attacked, there's a smaller window of time where you won't be vulnerable. So your damage comes from the Facet of Elements. You want to put that like on a node or a down body. You have your Mallyx stance, which gives a lot of torment, which you can pulse. And you'll also give out a lot of torment from Banish Enchantment, which removes boons, so it's really good versus like Guardians. And you also have Call to Anguish, which is a chill, which gives out torment. And basically, the build revolves around CCing enemies in your torment, because torment does more damage to enemies who aren't moving. So if you land a lot of torment on them while they're CC'd, they're going to be taking more damage. So you want to kind of do like a CC damage combo. And the main damage combo is pretty much this. So you're going to start in Mace, and then you're going to do 2, and then you're going to legend swap, and then you're going to weapon swap, and then you're going to press 2 again. So it'll look like this. I got 7 burn at one point. And the reason for that is because the Echoing Eruption puts down a fire field, And you can use Sword 2 inside the fire field to get a combo finisher whirl, which gives out burning bolts. And I'll do this, make sure they don't hit me, and then I'll do the combo. I've pretty much done more than half of its health just with that one little combo. So it's really strong if you can land it. But people aren't going to just sit there. Even though the weapon swap is instant, as soon as they see you, they're going to probably kite. So you want to be landing it with like your call to anguish and stuff like that. In this match, you'll see I start out giving pulsing boons to my allies with the glint stance, and it's generally better to give out the fury and swiftness because those stack in duration, and then when you get into a fight you generally want to give out the protection to your allies and maybe a little bit of might and regeneration. So we jump on this renegade and immediately CC them before they can react, and my guardian has really high burst build. So we actually want to play around them. Their Dragon Hunter goes for a res, but I have so much cleave on this build that they can't go for that. I take a lot of damage, so I go into my shield and wait for a better situation. I pop my heal so that I can counter pressure for free. And we've got 2 kills now, but we have to be very safe. I go into Mallyx and I call to anguish. And as you can see, their Dragon Hunter got CC'd while they had my 10 stacks of torment on them. So they took a lot of damage there. And we're going to be chasing this renegade, but yeah, basically the Condi cleanse on this build will come from the shield skills, legend and weapon swapping, and I also have the F2 in Mallyx, which will transfer conditions, so that's always good. So we get down here, and I use my shield block on top of the body so that I can pulse my Condis on them while I'm basically blocking, right? Like you can swap legend while blocking and it can be very good at cleaving down state bodies while also being safe. So we get more kills here, and we're going to chase this renegade here as well. Now we do have mid node. We might be losing home node. I'm not really sure. I see one of us is dead on the map, but far is not really worth it that much on this map because it's so easy for them to just respawn and go to their home node. So you usually get punished for going to far and not having a lot of sustain. So we're going for kills here more than the node, because if we let them keep respawning on top of us, then we're eventually going to die. So we need to keep killing them to prevent that from happening. So my guardian is kiting on the terrain here. I land pretty much my combo there on the terrain to help them cleave out that target. And now we've got a really good hammer 5 from the guardian, which is going to allow us to get this next kill. And yeah, we have like 3 here, or maybe 4, and yeah, we may be farming kills, but we're losing mid at the same time, so we need to be killing a little bit faster potentially. So respawns are a thing right now. We know that the Scourge on our team is gonna stay here because they're not really moving, so we do have to be careful. If the respawns just kill our Scourge, they'll take the node. So we are trying to get kills here. Our Scourge just leaves the node and that gets decapped, but that doesn't matter because we don't really want to be watching the node. We want to be getting kills for our team here. So we'll let the rest of our team worry about the node, because we can pretty much make it an easier job for them if we get kills for them. Now our Scourge goes down and we go for the res here. I am pulsing out potentially good boons to support us, but yeah, that's probably not resable. We are heavily outnumbered at this point, and I have a lot of Condis on me. I use my glint heal, which is pretty good for keeping me alive here, and I get a little bit of resolution to survive the burns. But yeah, I'm looking at the renegade, and I'm probably going to call to anguish on that to get I get a really good CC, and because of that we're able to get the kill. I knock the body, and then I put my passive elements on it, but they get knocked further. So I'm gonna watch out. Yeah, the DH longbow 5 got me there, so I'm going to stun break once I hit the wall. And I do want to peel for my teammate here because they may be low on cooldowns. I'm not really sure on the state of their cooldowns, but I'm giving them healing with my shield 4. And I'm not using my heal skill immediately because I want to be pulsing out more and more regen for them. And as you can see, it's giving them like 100 healing per tick, so you know it's decent amount of support for your team. So we're gonna go for the beast here actually, which you'll see the absolute DPS of the torment on a beast, right? You know, the torment changes were seen as a PvE change. Well, there you go. We instantly kill the beast there with a torment and a DPS guard. So now we're gonna try to chase kills here. I get headbutted, which is very dangerous. So I go into my block, but they have unblockable, so I take quite a bit of damage here. And I'm gonna immediately use my glint heal and just throw all my facets out just to get the facet echo out, which will give me boons. I get longbow 5 here again, but luckily it's in a weird kind of angle so I can get out. And we're gonna re-push into this node together. One thing that's really important with this build is playing with your team, because while you are very strong as a solo in general, if you're outnumbered, you're going to get focused easily because the weakness of Revenant is to be CC'd. So when you're outnumbered, you get CC'd, you get condied, and you just die. So you do want to be playing with your team as often as possible just to make it so that your build doesn't get hard countered by being outnumbered. So that's exactly the situation I'm in here. I get very lucky that the Jade Winds hits me after I make it past the line of sight. And my teammate has it down here, and I'm trying to lure them to help like cleave at the same time. I land a really good Call of Anguish, but they have stability. So we're gonna... I think we got the kill on the Renegade there because of the passive condies that I was giving out. So we have a kill here, and I have to be a little bit mindful of my teammates' state here because they're not that sustainable. So I land a really good pull there, but the judge's intervention towards my teammate, I get them through the wall with my Axe 5, which is really nice. But yeah, the warrior respawns and we have to be careful here. So I'm healing them with the shield 4. I give out the regeneration, and I'm just trying to give out as much counter pressure as possible. And I know that this Dragon Hunter is a very squishy target, so I try to pressure them. And I'm going to land a Call to Anguish here, but it gets blocked. And at this point, yeah, you see I get CC'd and I'm dead. So you got to be careful with the numbers there. As I said, when they're respawning like that, you can be outnumbered, and when you get outnumbered, you die. So we did get the rest of the map off of that, but we're going to lose everything because of that, because I'm dead. So we don't have as much presence. Or potentially we could lose everything. So I'm going to respawn and go back into the fight at far and just see what I can do for my team. So it looks like they're all sustaining pretty okay. Actually, the Scrapper's really low at home. I think, yeah, the Scrapper's at home is that. Yeah, so that's not really this fight. This is actually a winning fight for us. So it doesn't really matter what I do too much. But yeah, that's pretty much... We've already kind of snowballed from holding that 2v3 at far enough that our team could push in and win off of my death. In World vs. World, I take the Shiro stance instead of the Mallyx stance because the Shiro stance gives you the phase traversal, which is really good for chasing down kills. World vs. World is so much more open, and it's really hard for you to secure kills on a Condi Rev when you just have Mallyx and Glint, because everyone can just run away from you. So I really like the Shiro stance. And you also have Riposting Shadows, which is really good for escaping outnumbered situations. Jade Winds, super good for setting up big combos, like you'll land Jade Winds, and then you can do the 2 skill, and they'll be stunned inside the burning. So it's just really good. And of course, World vs. World has a lot more situations where you're going to be outnumbered and you're just going to have tons of conditions on you. So you need to know where your condition cleanse is. So whenever you swap into sword, that will give you your energy and cleansing sigils. So cleansing in World vs. World gives you 3 conditions cleansed, which is super good. So if you're getting a lot of conditions on you, make sure you don't swap out of sword, but that you legend swap. And then you've got your shield skills, you've got your elite skill, Facet of Chaos, or if you use Jade Winds, generally won't be used for that purpose. You'll generally use the elite in Glint to give you the leadership rune proc, which will convert 3 conditions into boons. So that's really important. And just in general, knowing how to use phase traversal to be able to juke, chase kills, because you can port to a target and you can basically save yourself from dying in a lot of situations. The build is mostly useful for roaming, but you could be going into Zergs and doing a lot of burst damage too as well. But it is a full melee build, so you do have to be careful about going inside Zergs. If you want more of an explanation of how I use this build in World vs. World, you can check out the video in the description, which is just basically an entire video dedicated to World vs. World roaming on this build. So you can check that out, and that's pretty much it. So give this video a like, subscribe if you want more, and I will see you guys next time.